Hi everyone, my name is Kashivi Kashingungu and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're a subscriber to my channel, thank you very much for subscribing. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe. Do please like, follow, and share. I'll appreciate that so much. Since coming out with my endometriosis diagnosis, I thought that this would be a perfect platform to share my experiences with endometriosis as well as learn from other women who are suffering from this illness. Endometriosis is a chronic illness. It is not yet known what causes endometriosis, and there is no cure for endometriosis as of now. Endometriosis is a condition in which the tissue lining the inside of the uterus starts to grow outside of the uterus and into other areas. And this can be on your ovaries, in your bowel. Basically, endometriosis has been found in every organ of the body. So endometriosis is not just a female reproductive system illness. It can affect any organ in your body. Today, I'm going to be sharing my diagnosis, how I found out I had endometriosis, how long it took me to be diagnosed with endometriosis. Endometriosis starts in women of reproductive age. So for as long as a young person or a young girl is able to get their periods, that means that they are of reproductive age, and that is when endometriosis may start to develop. Now, like many women, my diagnosis took very long and it wasn't very straightforward. I always had painful periods. Now, painful periods is one of the symptoms of endometriosis. And back then, you would just be told that, no, that's just how it is. Some women or some girls have painful periods and some don't. But as you will all agree, those of you who suffer from endometriosis, the period pain that comes from endometriosis is not like any other normal period pain. It is pain that makes you unfunctional for the day, whether you're in school or at work. Basically, I used to take off the day from school. I used to take off the day from work when I was on my period and I was suffering from period pains that are caused by endometriosis. But back then, we didn't know that it was endometriosis. So I only got my diagnosis 6 years ago. And when I got my diagnosis, the doctor wasn't specifically looking for endometriosis. Like, that is not even something that crossed the doctor's mind to say that, these symptoms could be endometriosis. But by the time I was diagnosed, I also had other symptoms like bowel problems with my digestive system. I had to change my diet because they diagnosed me with gastritis. Another general practitioner diagnosed me with, because I was unable to sleep. Yes, insomnia was one other symptom I didn't know was linked to endometriosis. So I would literally not be able to sleep at night. I would stay awake like for 6 months straight in a row. I would not be able to sleep. And I didn't know that that was associated with endometriosis. So this doctor prescribed like sleep medication, which I didn't take because deep down in my heart, I knew that I didn't need this medication. It was something deeper than just being deprived of sleep. I had an endoscopy done to check to see what was wrong with my stomach, and they found nothing. And then eventually, the general practitioner started really taking my case very seriously. And that is when he discovered that I had like fibroids, or they call them myomas as well, in my uterus. And so this doctor wanted to operate, this general practitioner wanted to operate, but medical aid refused. Medical aid refused and said, you are not a specialist. You cannot operate on somebody with such a condition. You might damage their reproductive system completely. They might not be able to give birth after you operate because you are not a specialist. So medical aid refused to approve my operation with this general practitioner. And that is when I was referred to a specialist, a gynecologist in Windhoek. And so this gynecologist in Windhoek confirmed that I had endometriosis. And so she suggested that, and this was not via laparoscopy. Laparoscopy is one of the ways, one of the most common ways in which endometriosis is diagnosed. But mine was diagnosed before a laparoscopy. It had gotten so bad. It was at stage 4 already, and it had gotten so bad that they could detect it just with normal ultrasound. And that is when the gynecologist knew that, mine was really severe. And then I was scheduled for an operation with this same gynecologist. And during the operation, this gynecologist opened me up and closed me up and said that my case was so severe, it was above her scope. She couldn't operate on me because it was too much for her. It was above what she knew she could do. And so she referred me to another gynecologist who's from South Africa and would come to Namibia maybe once or twice. And they were going to come back in Namibia, I think maybe 6 months later. And so they put me on the list, and they prescribed a medication for me. It was actually an injection. They injected me with a medication that would make the symptoms of endometriosis less severe, like the pain less severe. And I remember this medication was like put me into menopause basically. So I had temporary menopause in order for me to deal with the symptoms. And with temporary menopause, I didn't have my period. I didn't have my period at all. And if I did, it wasn't painful and it wasn't heavy, it wasn't severe. And that is another symptom of endometriosis. Sometimes I would bleed in between periods, and I didn't understand why I would be bleeding in between periods. Little did I know that it was endometriosis. And so I was operated in 2020, and the operation was successful. But like I said, endometriosis is not curable. As of now, people believe that endometriosis is a female reproductive illness. Endometriosis is not a female reproductive illness. It is an inflammation. The body does not know how to deal with this chronic illness, and so the response is inflammation. One of the reasons why endometriosis takes so long to diagnose is, first of all, because of a lack of knowledge on endometriosis, and the medical professions telling us that it is nothing serious because of a lack of knowledge from them. And that is why I always say to my fellow endo warriors to really equip themselves with the knowledge in order to advocate for themselves when they visit doctors who may not know about endometriosis. But also for me personally, one of the reasons why it took so long to diagnose is that government hospital, for example, does not diagnose endometriosis, did not diagnose endometriosis in my case. Why? Because they would only want to deal with the symptoms and not try to investigate the main cause of what the problem, what was causing these symptoms. And that is one of the reasons why my diagnosis took so long. But also, it's because I did not have medical aid. I believe that if I had medical aid before I was diagnosed, I would have probably been diagnosed sooner than 6 years ago. And like most of us in Namibia, we cannot afford medical aid until we start working. And so when I started working, I could afford medical aid, and I was able to really get the medical attention I needed for my condition. Now, I mentioned some of the symptoms that I had of endometriosis. The first symptoms was painful periods, then it was bleeding in between periods, and then I would have severe stomach aches. And lately it has been shoulder pain, and insomnia is also one of them. So I think some of these symptoms vary from one person to the next person, and so endometriosis is not a one shoe fits all. Endometriosis might affect somebody differently, and that is why there are stages of endometriosis. If you suspect that you have endometriosis, please go and get checked. And the sooner you have a diagnosis, the better you are able to actually deal with the symptoms. The sooner you are able to, get the medical attention that you need. And once you are diagnosed with endometriosis, my advice is equip yourself with as much knowledge as you can about endometriosis, because not many doctors know about endometriosis. Some nurses or some medical practitioners even make fun of us. They say that it is all in our heads, we are making it up, it's not that painful, and things like that. And so one of the reasons actually why it takes so long for endometriosis to be diagnosed is that nobody believes us, and they just assume that it is a woman issue. Every woman gets painful periods, but endometriosis is more than just a painful period. So if you suspect that you have endometriosis because of some of the symptoms that I have mentioned, please do get checked and make sure that you get the diagnosis that you require, so that you can better take care of yourself. So I've come to the end of my video. Thank you all so much for watching. Next time we will talk about endometriosis as well as infertility. And so if you have any questions, please do write them in the comments, or you can also follow me on Instagram, TikTok, as well as Facebook. You can DM me there. You can DM me your questions. If you have your own story that you would like me to share, please do also share your stories so I can share them with a wider community of women who suffer from endometriosis, because I believe that we all need the support that we can get from each other in order to live with this illness. Thank you all so much for watching, and goodbye.